welcome to On the Bauble Podcast, episode 42. I'm your host, Sebastian J. Ueda, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, we're going to be talking about the Dusk Till Dawn spoilers, and we're going to be talking about the banlist announcement for July 3rd. We're going to take a quick break from our typical Monarch hero guides, and we're just going to look into this new set. But before we do that, how was your week, Yuki?
My week's been good. I've sort of just been getting used to being off work, which is really nice. It's been a good change of pace. We did some drafting on the weekend, Monarch draft. We did 2 drafts back to back. I went 1-2 with a very good chain deck. I was the only chain. I think I kind of misplayed and got greedy and kept all my cards when I had super lethal, and then I got killed by Merciful Retribution, so I probably could have ended that draft 2-1. And then I 3-0'd on Boltyn, which was exciting. I don't think it was the greatest Boltyn deck, but it was just kind of fine. I probably maybe deserved to lose to Levia. There was no way I was winning that game, but then she lost to her blood death.
Well, that's what Levia does, right? She sometimes loses to herself, which is the major issue with that deck.
Yeah, it was just I had 5 cards in deck, and they're at 3, and all I could do was they had an off turn, and then I blocked out, and I played a yellow Take Flight from my arsenal for 3 because it rips 1 card. And then I'm just I hope that she bricks because she has a bunch of not 6s in her discard, and I don't think I'm winning this game otherwise because I have 5 cards in deck. And I was at 1. I can never keep a hand.
And they banished non-6s?
They banished 3 non-6s and they lost.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with Levia, where if she has too many non-6s, and depending on how the game goes, you just lose to yourself sometimes.
Yeah, agreed.
With the new Levia card coming out, that's gonna change too, so it's gonna be pretty interesting for at least for the CC portion of Levia. That's gonna change quite.
It doesn't save you in draft unless you can convince your opponent and the judge that you have Levia redeemed, which would be pretty good, but good luck with that one.
Yeah, kind of broken.
You also drafted that day. How did your drafts go?
I went 0-3 on the first one.
Yes.
So I drafted Prism both times. I went 0-3 on the first one, and I went 2-1 on the second one. The 0-3 draft, I was getting cut from Prism, but I was trying my no pivot, no scout Prism, and honestly experimented a little bit too hard. I ended up picking Rise Above and seeing if that card was playable. I would stay away from the blue one. That card killed me all 3 games. The red one was quite bad, but it was not as bad as the blue one. And it may have costed me the game. I'm not exactly sure on how the math would have worked out if it was some random no block. But I think if it was slightly better than Talismans or Memorial Ground, but it's not as good as maybe a yellow glisten. Maybe a yellow glisten would have been better than red Rise Above, but it's I'm trying to figure out that which bad generic is better in Prism right now than each other. And I've definitely realized Memorial Ground is probably better than Blue Rise Above at this point.
I see. That is that's fantastic to know. Now I know if I ever have to choose between Blue Memorial Ground or Blue Rise Above in my Prism draft.
Yeah, I think I would actually
pick Memorial Ground every time.
Yeah, Blue Memorial Ground every time. It actually can pick up something if you build towards it, or if you just make sure you have targets for Memorial Ground on your second cycle, you can actually play it and put a card back on top. It's actually sweet.
I mean, it does something. I'll give you that.
Yeah. It's like if your draft is going horribly, just be oh, this Rise Above blocks for 2. It actually doesn't. It blocks for -1 instead and rips a card out of your own hand and still does nothing.
But if you have a Bauble or a Memorial Ground, then you can combine the 2 of them to block for 2.
Yes. It's that is very true. That is very true. It's honestly with my draft strategy right now, I've been getting drafts with multiple Baubles. I've been getting drafts with a Memorial Ground. I've been getting drafts with multiple yellow brandishes and belittles in my Prism deck with Baubles. They've been an experience. It's been a whole wide range of I've 3-0'd with decks that just had basically no heralds in it because there was like 4 other Prism drafters. And then I've also O3'd with no heralds in my deck because my deck just didn't function. And I'm playing Rise Aboves and just all of these awful cards. Funnily enough, Yinty Yanty is not a good card if you physically cannot make Spectral Shields.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. We got a lot to talk about. You want to jump into the main topic?
Yeah, let's start off with the banlist announcement. This came out yesterday from our recording. We're recording on July 4th right now. 1 card got banned, is that right?
Yeah, essentially. I'll read out all the bans. So the big one is Bullseye Bracers got banned in Classic Constructed. Skeleta got moved from suspended to banned. They decided that Skeleta is just broken. Before it was suspended until Viceroy left, and then they went, wait, Vynsette also cares about Rune Chants. Maybe we can just never have this card. And then Pulse of Eisenloft is now legal, in quotations. It's not banned, but there's also no Earth Ice hero. So I don't know.
Look, at least they unbanned Pulse of Eisenloft. I'm like a little bit happy. At the same time, it's a little too late.
Yeah, my guess is that they just, like, as a D-react, they're fine with it. They just didn't like the double pulse Oldhim react repeatable effect. But yeah. Anyways, those two bans don't really change anything. The big one is Bullseye Bracers. They kind of go into a lot of detail about it. They mentioned that Lexi seems like the top performing deck, although Oldhim was also good and sort of somewhat keeping her down. They think that Dromai and Azuri pose good threats to Lexi, and they said that they were very close to banning a card from Lexi or not banning a card. They felt like she was pretty clearly a strong deck, but they also felt like she was not way out of line with best decks, especially compared to some other heroes. They decided ultimately to ban it to reduce the ceiling on her big turns. And I think that banning Bullseye Bracers does exactly that. I don't want to say you can't do the four arrow turns. You can, but you need to either get like a Boltyn shot reload somewhere in the middle, or you need to use your Quiver of Rustling Leaves to get that 4th arrow. That does make it substantially harder to get those giant turns, and I think it will probably hurt quite a bit in the Dromai and Azuri matchups, which were already tough. Like, you have trouble punching through, and I think lowering that ceiling a bit will make those already hard matchups into like probably decently unfavored, is my guess.
If they banned one of, let's say, like all the cards that people were talking about trying to get banned, like 3 of a Kind, Codex of Frailty, Rain Razors, like those super powerhouse cards, do you think the deck will basically be unplayable if they did ban that card?
It's hard to say. I kind of doubt it. I think that the deck would still be okay. I think like losing Codex of Frailty in particular would be fine. I think you would just probably play another Codex. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like this ban. It preserves the playstyle of the hero and sort of the feel of the hero, and just takes a little bit off the ceiling. We'll have to see what all the ramifications of this are. Like, it does affect Azalea and it does affect Riptide as well. So I don't know. We'll see exactly what this ban does, but I do think it is a pretty decent hit to Lexi, and it kind of prevents her from being able to do one of the things that she was able to do. Whereas some of the other softer bans that people were talking about, like specific arrows, like maybe Endless or Heat Seeker were common ones that people talked about. You can ban them and they do take away from the deck, but they'll also just get replaced by another arrow.
Yeah, all the arrows are pretty close in like functionality, 1 for 5 with an on hit. They're all annoying.
Yeah, so you just have a different on hit, and maybe the on hit is not quite as good as Endless or Heat Seeker because those are premiums, but you'll find something else to fill the slot. So I think that Bullseye Bracers is a pretty good ban. I like it.
Then last question, I guess, would be, what are you replacing your arm piece?
I imagine you'll probably use Hornet Sting. It blocks for 1, and if there's an arrow on top, it deals 1. So that's like potentially a 2-point card, and I think you'll probably pair it with the turn where you think you might want to activate your Bullseye, or not your Bullseye, the Quiver of Rustling Leaves, because then you'll know if there's an arrow on top, and if there is, you can make an informed decision. So my guess is that's what you'll use, but yeah, there's not fantastic options in that slot. It's like that or Iron Rot or Shock Charmers. Shock Charmers probably not good unless you're a Fuse build.
You don't think people move towards the Fuse build because of Shock Charmers?
Maybe.
Are
I think that
you
deck still is like pretty inconsistent. It just struggles from like the whole like if you want to play Codex 3 of a Kind Rain Razors, that's 9 cards. And if you want your 18 ice cards to fuse consistently, you're already at like 27 non-arrows, and then you only have 33 arrows and you're going to brick a bunch. So you have to like something has to give. You either can't fuse as much, or you have inconsistency with arrows, or you have to like I've seen some people just like not playing as many Codex or Rain Razors, which also doesn't seem great. So I don't know. I think that Fuse deck has it can do some powerful stuff, but I think it will always kind of struggle either with consistency or with if it gains more consistency, it will lose some power for it.
are you gonna be working on Lexi for like the next couple of weeks at least to like try and see what it gets replaced by, or like if the build even changes with the Bullseye Bracer ban?
Nah, I'll deal with it later. I'm probably going to just try out the new heroes while they're new and maybe focus on draft a little bit because I feel like your draft knowledge is always relevant by the time you get to the Pro Tour, and then you can kind of brush up, or not the Pro Tour, Nationals, and then you can kind of brush up on it right before Nats. So yeah, I'm not really too worried about Lexi. I feel like the deck will be there. I think it's still going to be pretty good. I don't think that there's like a ton of work to do on it, and so I'm just going to explore other options. And if Lexi seems like the deck, then I'll probably go back to it like I don't know, a month out or something.
Then you want to go into the big topic today, which is the Dust Till Dawn spoilers?
Yeah, why don't we do that? So I think we can just go light heroes, then shadow heroes. We'll start with one of the most anticipated heroes from the set, Prism. Prism has returned. She is so there's Prism, Awakener of Soul, the adult hero. She has 32 life. Light Illusionist hero, and she reads, whenever a card with Herald in its name is put into Prism Soul during an action phase, you may search your deck for a figment, put it onto the arena, then shuffle. And she also has a once per turn instant that costs 2 resources and requires her to banish a card from Soul, and says awaken target figment you control. So you might be asking, what are figments? Figments are essentially the front side of her angels. Her angels get played as figments, and then you can spend the 2 resources to awaken them and flip them into an angel. All of the figments are 4 cost instants, and they're all yellows, so they don't block, and they have various effects when they enter the battlefield. So for example, Figment of Erudition says it's a legendary, you can only have one in your deck, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a ponder token. All of the figments are legendary. There's 7 of them in total, and they'll all have some kind of effect when they come into play. And then on the flip side, all of the angels are 4 power, 4 toughness allies that also have ward 4. So if you attack Prism directly and she leaks damage, the angels will die, or they can just choose to hit the angels and get their hit effects on the angels as well. In order to attack with them, they cost 2 resources. And then they have some kind of attack trigger. So in the case of Erudition, it's a once per turn 2 resource attack for 4. And when Soraya attacks, you may banish a card from your hero's soul. And if you do, you draw 2 cards. So this probably stands out as like the most powerful angel, drawing 2 pretty good. And you get a ponder on enter the battlefield. And if a herald hits, you get to search for this figment and put it into play for free and kind of bypass that 4 cost, which I think is really what you're going to want to be doing with this deck. Paying 4 and then like paying 4 resources plus a card and then plus 2 more to flip it is just really, 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 and a card in soul is just really expensive to get the angel. And as much as some of the effects are strong, what is your overall impression on the angels, Jay? Do you think they're good?
So my personal take is I think the angels are pretty good, but the figment side is quite awful. Like if you pay 4 resources for any of the on play abilities, it is not worth it, right? Like paying 4 to make a ponder token, paying 4 to deal 1 damage, paying 4 to make a spectral shield. That's just like and you have to play the card, right? The figment itself is
Mm-hmm.
the card itself. So 3 cards for a ponder token is not worth it.
Yeah. So I think you need to be getting your heralds to hit and then tutoring these out. And even when you do that, I'm still kind of skeptical.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Because basically what this hero says is that all of your heralds gain an extra on hit. So they already have their own on hit except for the War Torn Herald. And so all of the heralds you play in Prism now reads on hit, it goes to soul, do its on hit, like let's say protection, herald of protection, and make a spectral shield. And it has the optional 1 of 7 abilities. So you get to choose for the situation which one you want. You have no arsenal card, you go get a ponder token. If your opponent has an ally that has 1 health, you go ping that ally for 1. If you need to make another spectral shield, you get the protection to get a spectral shield. If you need a card on top of your deck, you get the other one that puts the card on top of your deck. So you just have this like full selection of on hit abilities that you just get to choose which one you get. So I think it's like a cool mechanic of like it actually just buffs your herald just even a little bit more, which is pretty cool, I think.
I do agree with that. And I think it does make your heralds pretty strong. Where I have questions about this deck is just I think she's going to struggle into decks with lots of poppers because she's so reliant on that. So then you have to kind of like bake in like an Iris plan to deal with, like, for example, Bravo if you want to, which is already like a pretty big deck building cost. And these angels are just really expensive. If you're paying 2 resources to attack with them, it's like you need to protect this angel with your cards. Like if it's a deck like Uzuri or Katsu, I can't really see you doing it. If it's a deck like Lexi, I can't really see you doing it. Like there's just a lot of decks where I don't know how you ever protect this angel and have cards left. And then even if you spend your hand trying to protect your angel, they can potentially just hit it at the end because you can target the angel directly. So I feel like the combination of 4 life and ward means that they're going to be like pretty hard to have stay on the battlefield. And they do kind of gain you life, and maybe that gets there, but Prism is like maybe the hero I'm the most skeptical of right now, I'll say.
I think Prism's gonna be pretty powerful. If you are reliant on trying to keep these angels alive, you might have some issues. But I think the play pattern of Prism is gonna be yes, it's still gonna lose to poppers, but you want to attack with your heralds, have them hit, and make them turn into the angel and attack with that angel right away on the same turn, and then just have that angel die. But then now you have cards in your hand again, so you attack with another herald on hit, make a different angel attack for that. So you try and put this like red herald for 7, angel for 4, so 11 damage turn with 2 on hits essentially. And then the angel that you flipped over has ward 4. It's going to soak up some number of damage. I don't know exactly how much it would be, probably like 1 or 2. And then so you've had this like 13 damage turn cycle over and over again. And that actually might be pretty strong because of the herald on hits.
Yeah, I can see it. I just have like a lot of questions about how this deck's going to come together and beat everything. But I also know that like original Prism sort of had similar puzzles. I think the path was a little bit more clear because Luminaris interacted with both the heralds as well as the auras, whereas now you kind of need to pick between new Luminaris, which can pay 2 to give an angel or a herald go again once per turn, or you can play something like Iris to turn on your auras, but you can't do both. And so you really do have to kind of choose between them. And yeah, I don't know. I have some questions about this deck. I'm curious to see what people come up with. I think that the text box reads powerful and she can do some strong stuff. I just kind of wonder how she's going to deal with both the like super go wide aggro decks as well as the because I think she can kind of get run over at 32 life is my suspicion, and I also don't know how she can deal with popper heavy decks. And if you're bad into both of those, it's kind of feels bad. So like I'm not saying that she is bad into both of those. We just got the set, but I think that there's some work that needs to get done there and figured out if people are going to be successful with her.
Yeah, I think just one last thing I want to talk about would be there is a figment that reduces a power of an attack that your opponent's blocking with. This Prism reads whenever a card with Herald in its name is put into Prism's Soul. It doesn't actually matter if the Herald hit and went to Soul, or if you use, let's say, a headpiece like Halo of Illumination and charged a Herald into Soul at instant speed. After your opponent blocked with exactly a 6 power, you can use the Halo of Illumination, put a Herald into Soul, and then find this figment that gives that popper -1 power. then now your Herald doesn't get popped. It hits, it goes to Soul, and then you get a second Figment on the board. So you can actually get like double Figment on one turn, but it does require you to pop your helmet. And I think like plays like this will allow you to like really get ahead and not be in a that much of a bad spot with 32 health. I just wish like you can play more than one copy of a Figment, or like there just needs to be a way to like put Figments back into your deck so that you can do this like multiple times, or there just needs to be more ways to interact with your opponent's powers, basically.
Yeah. There are a few. Figment of Rebirth is able to put, it says when it enters the arena, you may put a yellow, oh no, it says action card from your graveyard. I thought it was just a yellow card. Okay,
I
that
think the
doesn't buy it
Angel
back.
side is the yellow card.
The angel side is a yellow card. Okay, yeah, I think the angel side can buy it back.
Yeah, the Angel side can buy back Figments. The front side can only buy back Heralds.
Gotcha. And then she does also have some other tricks to get around poppers. She has Celestial Reprimand, which at red is a 0 cost light illusionist instant, and it says target card defending an attack with Herald in its name gets -3 on the combat chain, -3 power. So basically, any popper that isn't 9 power or up can get bumped down, and then you can make the Herald hit and get through. So I think that that's probably going to be a key. I would imagine that's a key piece of the puzzle, at least against some of the decks where you can sneak in poppers. But I still think like getting to 40 damage against Guardian feels like a pretty big task.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like Spinal Crush is always gonna be a popper, and like Bravo has so many 10 power attacks that like it's just always gonna be a popper no matter what. It's kind of gross.
Like maybe, I don't know, maybe Iris is just good enough. But yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say right now. You want to move on to the next hero?
Yeah, we can talk about Boltyn. So Boltyn is not a new hero, but he's one of the heroes in this set that got support. Basically, all the Monarch heroes got support, and then Prism returned, and then we got Vynsette instead of Chain as a Shadow Rune Blade. So for Boltyn, he got a couple key cards, and then I think a lot of just slight upgrades to the deck that sort of add up to be, I think, pretty good overall. Like, I think it does boost Boltyn's power a lot. And in particular, I think that the Raiden Boltyn decks got quite a bit. Like, he can play a pretty solid aggro game plan now. And yeah, he just has like better starters, better tricks, better just like his, because he had good majestics already with stuff like Lumina Ascension and not a majestic, I guess, but like Via the Vanguard. Like, he had good power cards. It was just sort of like your, I don't know, is it Engulfing Light, the 3 for 0 charge that when it hits, it goes to your soul? Like, those cards were just so not good. And I think upgrading them to be even a little bit better is actually like pretty big game for him.
Yeah, before they had to play like these commons from Monarch that was like pretty okay. Like it wasn't even like that great in draft, and then when you put it into a CC setting, it just like didn't hold up. But now with the printing of like multiple different majestics that like fill that role even better than what the common versions did, it's like a significant bump. Like Boltyn was pretty close to being playable, and then with these like slight upgrades to all of his cards, that now you get to take out all of his bad cards and replace it with like acceptable cards in this set. Boltyn's actually going to be probably like an actual player in the format now.
Well, it remains to be it remains to be seen where exactly he'll fall. I could see him kind of being like more like a tier 2 deck that can win some games and maybe spike some events here and there, but isn't like a meta defining deck. Or I could see him maybe being really good if people can figure him out. We can talk about some of his key cards. He got a new piece of equipment that I think is pretty huge. It's called Iron Song Versus. This is a warrior equipment arms that has temper 2, and it has an ability. It's a once per turn action that costs 1 resource, and it says your next sword attack this turn gets, when this hits a hero, create a courage token. Go again. And courage tokens are just permanents that stay on the board, and they say that your next attack or weapon swing get +1, which means that the Boltyn attack reaction, the remove a card from soul, gives something with attack higher than its base Go Again is going to be live from that courage token, which is really, really big. So being able to do for example, your like a pretty bread and butter turn might be something like you pitch a yellow take flight charge and then you swing with Raiden. Before you just kind of have one resource floating, but you can now sync that resource into Irisong Versus. The Raiden's kind of hard to block out because it comes in for 3, and then if they block and you've charged, it will go up to 4. And if it hits, you get a Courage token, and your Go Again is online next turn. So it just does a lot for the deck in terms of giving him an outlet for extra resources and also enabling his future turns and kind of smoothing it out. And there are other cards that give Courage tokens in the set, and I think that they're honestly all pretty good. There's a banner ray, and I believe there's an attack reaction that gives courage tokens, and all of them just seem...
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't seen anyone play with Boltyn yet. Did you watched somebody play test Boltyn yesterday? Is that right?
Yeah, I did. And honestly, there was so much going on. It was like almost a little hard to track. I think if you sit across from a Boltyn and you've never played, you're going to be like, you've never played him with the new cards, you're going to be a little bit lost because there's just so many like, oh, I charged this card and I put in a banner A and the banner A gives me this token, and this card, because I've charged a yellow, gives me like another token. And you're like, oh, you have like a Quicken and a Courage or something. And like, there's just a lot going on in the deck. And he can do some pretty powerful stuff. One of the cards that really impressed was V for Valor, and it seems kind of unassuming. It's a 0-cost light warrior action aura that blocks for 2, and it doesn't have Go Again, so it takes your action point to play, and it reads attack reaction, pay a resource, destroy this, charge your hero's soul, and target attack gets +3. This is sort of like a starter, a charge starter that sits on the board, but will always have Go Again, or will always enable Go Again because you're giving something +3. And notably, this hits any attack. So sometimes just going Snatch, I have a bunch of cards in hand and I have V for Valor on board, is like that Snatch can, you know, that Snatch can get charged to 7, and then the Boltyn ability is going to push it up to 8, and then there's going to be whatever follow up afterwards. And so, and you can do a similar line with like CNC. So I think V for Valor is actually like a pretty good card, and Boltyn's so good at getting Go Again that it's not that hard to play this out. So this was a card that actually really impressed me.
One of the local Boltyn players, he was talking about, ooh, what was that card in Monarch called? The on hit, like the Snatch for Boltyn in that set.
Oh, Bolt of Courage.
Bolt of Courage. Yeah, he was talking about having V. What do you do if you get attacked by a Bolt of Courage? They don't charge, and they have a V for Valor on the board. What do you do? Like, actually, as a blocker, what do you do? Right? Like, you just get blown out no matter what you do.
Yeah, so the threat here is that they can pay 1 to charge with Via the Valor, give it +3, bumping it to 6, and give it Go Again. So if you don't block, it's like a Snatch for 6 with Go Again. And if you do block, it's going to, if you block with an attack action, which is most card, or like most decks have a lot of attack actions, then you're going to bump it to 7. Like, this is just the starter on the turn. This is not even counting the rest of the hand. So I think that the card just sitting on board is really good. It's almost like going up in intellect when this is in play. So yeah, I think that's a pretty big get. Maybe a couple of the other cards that I think are impressive are things like Beaming Bravado, which is just a 0 for 3, block 3 that charges. And if you've charged a yellow card, it gets +1. So this is kind of like an Express Lightning that comes in for a 0 for 4 so long as you've charged a yellow. But it having +1 and essentially being another starter that can get Go Again all on its own is a big deal. And then I think there's another one that gets, I can't find the card here, but it gets Go Again if you've charged a yellow card, and it's just a 0 for 3. And that's just another one that just lets you play your turn, because one of the big problems that this deck has is in the past is you play outside of Take Flight, you play a starter or V, you play a starter with charge, and your opponent can just go, okay, no blocks, I take 3 or 4, and you're like, do I blow snaps here, or what am I doing, or like I better have Bolt of Courage in my hand so I can pump it and punish them, and like just, well, not even punish them, so that I can play my turn and not IP myself. Which is like a rough spot to be, and I think just having more go again starters is a big deal for this deck. I don't know exactly like how good that makes this deck overall. It's still too early to say, but I think that there's some pretty big gets. Like it's like a lot of small upgrades that kind of add up to be a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else you want to speak about Boltyn? Other than that, I'm not a Boltyn expert, so I just don't know.
I'd say the same. I'm not super familiar with Boltyn, but he seems interesting.
Hopefully, somebody in our locals will just like break him, and then I can just bring it to like U.S. Nats or like Canadian Nats.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are hoping that locally.
All right, so let's talk about the next hero. We're gonna be talking about Levia. So Levia didn't get a new hero, but she gets a. She's a Marvel. Is he a legendary?
There's a new L called Levia Redeemed, which is a shadow demi hero. Do you know how this works? Do you want me to talk about this?
So I do kind of know how it works, but I don't think we had a official rules explaining how this works. So this is technically speculations, but I'm pretty sure this is how this works. Well, Levia Redeemed is a double-faced card. One side is Levia Redeemed. The other side is called Blasmophet Levia Consumed. I'm going to talk about Levia Redeemed first. So she's a legendary Levia specialization, and it says action. Turn all cards in your banish zone face down. Transform Levia Redeem. Activate this ability only while this is in your inventory. And you have 13 or more cards with Blood Debt in your banish zone. So I think this card stays in your sideboard. And you can actually activate this ability while it's in your sideboard. And it will transform from regular Levia into this card whenever you can meet that requirement, or technically whenever you can activate that action. And I'm just going to briefly talk about Blasmophet. So Blasmophet is a very similar.
You missed a couple things about Levia Redeem. So she also has cards you own lose blood debt as a static ability. So once you activate this, you have no more blood debt to worry about. And this Levia Redeemed is an 8 health hero. So presumably how we believe this works is that when you use the action and switch into Levia Redeemed, it sets your life to 8. So if you're at 30 life, you'll lose 22 life and go to 8. But if you're at 1 life, which is I think when you'll use this, you'll essentially heal 7 up to 8, which is really strong. It basically means when Levia has to block out and is really low, you get to heal some life, turn off all your blood debt and reset, and maybe have a shot in the game.
Yeah. And Blasmophet Levia Consumed is the other side of this card. And then this card says, while this is in your inventory, when Blood Debt reduces your life to 13, so exactly 13, you may transform into Blasmophet Levia Consumed. And then she has the second ability of, once each turn, you may play a card with Blood Debt from your banish zone. Whenever a card is put into your banish zone, turn it face down. If it would lose life from Blood Debt, instead banish the top card of your deck. So this one in particular, you actually will never gain life or lose life. But if you're going to take damage down from 14 to less than 13, it's actually pretty funny because once you hit the first blood that triggers, you turn into this card and you don't go below 13. So you'll always have 13 life the turn you turn into this. You'll just have cards from top of your deck banished for the remaining blood debt that you still owe the game.
Yeah, so if you're at 14, you have 5 blood debt. The first blood debt sets you to 13. You may flip. If you do, then the remaining 4 blood debt triggers will mill the top 4 cards of your deck. What do you think about this side?
Levia Consumed has a lot of potential. Locally, I've been talking about with like a bunch of people just insane lines you can do with this card, where before Levia, once you were like at this point where you randomly took blood debt later in the game, like that could just be the way you lose the game. But now you can actually have setup turns late in the game where you just go, attack with your weapon, arsenal some card that you want to play next turn. When you turn into Consumed, purposely take blood debt from 14 to 13, turn into this card, And then on your next turn, you're basically a 5 intellect hero because you get to play one more card from your banished zone.
Yeah.
So
And it's probably like, aside from the defending piece, it's probably a little better than that too, because you get the card selection of any card from your banish zone that has blood debt.
yeah, and cards with blood debt is pretty powerful in Levia too.
I think it is quite a powerful ability overall.
I think one question I do have about this card, Levia Redeemed, is how do you register this card into your sideboard? Do you think you just register Levia Redeemed, you get both sides? Or do you think you need to like register one or the other?
I don't know. I would guess that you get both sides, and that's why they made it a dual face card, because like usually dual face cards you don't register both sides. Who knows? We've never had a demi hero before, so we could be wrong about that.
And then my other question would be, do you think you can play this card in Blitz?
I don't see why not.
Because can you even they have to change the rules that you can put non-equipment in your inventory in Blitz, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what happens.
But this card reads inventory. They purposely wrote the word inventory on this card.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It hadn't really occurred to me that you might not be able to, but yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. One thing to note about Blasphemous Levia Consumed is that if you are a blood debt heavy list that has a whole bunch of blood debt, you are going to burn through your deck really quickly because you lose the ability to turn off blood debt. So if you have, let's say, even just 10 cards with blood debt in your banish zone, then you're milling 10 cards from your deck and you're going to deck out pretty fast. And if that number is like 15 or 20, it's going to be even faster. So I think that while this side is really powerful, you probably have a pretty fast clock unless you are specifically building in a way where like maybe you have pretty low blood debt and you're just like trying to transform and then you get like a couple turns of extra 5 intellect and you're not going to mill yourself out. And I think that's something that's like kind of interesting, but would be like a different direction to take the hero.
Yeah, I love this card as a design just because like there's so much space for exploration and like deck design where I'm looking at this hero and I'm like, wait, Levia Redeem gains me 7 life. If I can gain 7 life with one card, I can maybe play a fatigue deck and like play no blood deck cards. Or I'm also thinking like if I'm playing Levia Consumed, if I play a bunch of blood deck cards and just like maybe I can make a combo deck with like multiple Blood Rush Bellows and a new card. What is the new Blood Rush Bellow called? Do you know?
Blood Dripping Frenzy.
Let's talk about that card real quick. So, Blood Dripping Frenzy is a blue pitch 2 cost that says, as an additional cost to play this, banish your hand. Draw a card for each card with Blood Debt banished this way. Your Brute and Shadow attack gets plus X power this turn, where X is the number of cards with 6 or more power banished this way. Go again. So, you can actually just like set up some insane turns with Blood Dripping Frenzy. As I said earlier, you can like set this up in your arsenal, purposely take Blood Debt, turn into Consumed, and then go Blood Dripping Frenzy and just go off on your opponent because you're guaranteed to be able to play at least one Blood Dead card from your banish, and it's gonna be the most powerful one in there. If it's like the 2 for 6 go again, or
Yeah, you could play like a Dread Screamer into Club or something is already pretty good.
yeah, there's just like so many different ways you can have an above rate turn with Blasphemous Levia Consumed. There's just so much to explore with this card. It's crazy.
I think Levia seems really interesting and is one of the heroes that I am most interested in diving into. I haven't really had a chance just yet, but I think that there's some really cool stuff that you can do. And I think that this demi hero really does give her the tools to kind of just not lose to herself quite as much as she used to, which I think was just a big problem with Levia. Is just sometimes just like we were talking about at the start of the podcast and draft, sometimes the deck just loses to itself and it feels really bad. And just taking that element away, I think, is going to do a lot for the deck. And I think there's a lot of potential there. But yeah, there's so much. It's kind of like a hard card to know exactly what the impact will be, just because there's like multiple cards. It's a mechanic we've never seen before, and yeah, I think it's a pretty exciting time for Levia.
Any other cards you want to talk about, Levia, before we move on?
Maybe really briefly, I do like this Slithering Shadowpede. It is a 1 for 6 with Blood Debt that doesn't block, and it reads if this was banished from your hand this turn, you may play it from your banish zone. 1 for 6 is like decently above rate. It doesn't block, which is a drawback. I think that there's some powerful stuff you can do with this. If you banish this to Art of War, you can then later play it. So you could do something like Art of War, banish this, give something go again, attack with this for 6, and then, I don't know, have some kind of follow up. And it also pairs nicely with Ram Raider, which is a 2 for 6 that blocks 3 and has Blood Debt. It says as an additional cost to play this, you can banish a random card from your hand. And if a card with 6 or more attack was banished this way, it gets go again. So the line here would be you have a blue Ram Raider and Slithering Shadowpede in your hand. And you could do something like Ram Raider for 6, banish the Slithering Shadowpede, it gets go again, play Slithering Shadowspeed, and you have a 3-card 12, which is really, really good. Now, are those two things enough to make it worth it? I don't know. And there are other cards that technically do have this like random banish from hand, so it's like it's a new mechanic that we do see. I think the other cards are like not quite as exciting because they do take a whole extra card to play, but it is definitely interesting.
That's fair. That's fair. And I think the most exciting part about Levia, you got to play with Carrion Husk. So that card is broken.
Oh, there actually is another card that we somehow glossed over. There's just so much to talk about with Levia, but her armor is incredible. She already had Carrion Husk and Scabs as amazing armor and Crown of Providence, but she has a new headpiece that I think is probably just better. Maybe you play both. I'm pretty sure you just play the new headpiece, right?
Oh, yes. Scowling Fleshblag. Oh my god. Almost forgot about this card. This card is
Yeah.
broken.
So this headpiece is a legendary brute equipment head, so Reinhardt can use it as well. And it blocks for 2 with Blade Break. And it says, when you defend, intimidate. So your opponent will lose a card at random from their hand, and then at the end of their turn, they will get it back. So they do have the option of arsenaling that card. But this is just super disruptive. I think anybody that's played against Stalagmite knows how awkward it is when a really strong opponent is able to say, nope, here's where you get a frostbite and kind of shut down your turn. And this is going to do, I think, a very similar thing, except maybe even more disruptive because you can just rip a card from their hand.
Yeah, a lot of the time a card could be worth easily 4 damage on the on the offense, and just being able to rip one card is huge. Like if you rip a blue from their hand, then maybe they can't even play their turn anymore. If you rip a red from their hand, it's just like a super offensive card that they can't now play. And player defending with this card is the one who gets to choose when to do it. So if they're gonna, you never know when they're gonna choose to use this flush bag. So is it, you can't always just play around this the whole time. I guess you have to play around this card the whole time. But if you do that, then you might be losing too much value to this card without them even blocking with it. And then if you don't play around this card, then maybe you just get blown out too hard that you can't even come back anymore. So it's this like slight mini game of like needing to play around this card and being aware that your opponent can do this. But then if you do that too much, then you just lose to this card by simply existing on the board. It's kind of gross.
Yeah. And I guess when I think about it, like this is probably a sideboard. Maybe you do play Crown of Providence as well, because, for example, against like Guardians, probably isn't doing much because they don't go wide. And like, yeah, you can get the pummel before they get a chance to pummel if it's in their hand, but if it's in their arsenal, you're kind of like out of luck, which isn't great. And they would just arsenal the pummel anyways, which doesn't seem fantastic. And Ranger, I think it might still be good enough, but it is definitely a little bit weaker because Ranger is a class that's sort of built to just be able to arsenal any card off ponder anyways. So, and they often kind of have like a big arrow at the start. Azalea will do kind of like one big arrow, and then your banish probably doesn't do much, and then Lexi can Voltaire in response and probably kind of choose which card gets put away and then just arsenal it. So I do think it's going to have some limitations, but I think against your like Fies and Briars and stuff, it's going to be pretty impactful.
Yeah. The other question is like, I don't know if you even put Crown of Providence in your sideboard because it's like not that much of an upside more, right? Like it's like they both block for 2 no matter what. Like, so Crown of Providence, you do get the like protection and like the little bit of the card selection, but like, is that worth a space in your sideboard? It might be. It might not be. I think Scowling Fleshbag definitely makes the deck, whereas Crown of
Yeah.
Providence might not.
Yeah, I think one of the big points for Crown of Providence would be if there's a lot of, if CNC Pummel is a big part of the format, then Crown of Providence is still going to be really good at combating that. And similarly, decks that are playing CNC Pummel are probably not going to, the Scowling Fleshbag is not going to be very good against them. So I think that will be like maybe the biggest deciding factor, but there might be other stuff I'm not thinking of too.
Okay, let's move on to the last hero in the set.
Wait.
Yes?
I just realized against Azuri, if you block their stealth card, they can't Azuri react because you're in the defense step.
That's so funny.
So they ever like attack with a stealth card and they have like a card in hand and a card in arsenal, you can just get them.
Wow, that's so gross. That's kind of gross.
Yeah, I'll be curious what like playing with and against this card will feel like, but it does seem really good.
It might be like, even though you're saying like, oh, like Levia can play around and they don't care what they card the arsenal, maybe like just on the 3 of a kind turn on the first arrow attack, they block with this and you're like, I lose a random red arrow. What do I do? Or like, oh no, I lost my only blue and I had blue floating already. I can't fire my arrow 3 times anymore.
Maybe. I do think Volterra being an instant will mitigate a lot of the things this card can do. Like maybe you can nab the blue, but yeah, I do think it being like Lexi having the instant speed Volterra activation is a big deal.
We don't know yet. We have to play around. We haven't played it with it. We haven't played against it yet. So maybe our evaluation of this card changes. Okay, and yeah, then finally let's move on to the final hero of the set. So this is a completely new hero. His name is called Vynsette, and he is the new.
Her name.
Oh, it's her.
Yes.
Okay, her name is Vynsette, and she is a Shadow Runeblade hero with 40 life. That's very good. And reads, at the start of your turn, banish a card from your hand. If you do, create a rune chant token. Second ability is, whenever you play a shadow non-attack action card, you may pay a life. If you do, the next rune chant effect that would deal damage this turn can't be prevented.
Maybe worth noting, we've also seen a keyword that seems to be tied to Vynsette specifically, and it's on a lot of the Shadow Runeblade attack actions in this set. It's called Runegate. Runegate reads, if you control rune chants equal to or greater than, in this case, Phantom Banshee's resource cost, you may play it from your banish zone without paying its cost. So essentially, these cards, you can play them from hand by paying their resource cost, or if they're in your banish zone, you can play them and they get reduced by your rune chants so that they're free, but you have to have enough rune chants. So if it's Phantom Banshee, which is a 3 for 7 at red, you have to have at least 3 rune chants to be able to play it, or you just cannot play it. You can't pay like 2 rune chants and a resource. You have to have the full amount of rune chants. So, and notably, actually all of these cards are either 2 cost or more. So there's some 2s, some 3s, and then there's like a blue 4 cost one as well. But most of them are 2s and 3s. So the real trick here is sort of like you get 1 rune chant for free when you banish to Vynsette's ability at the starter turn. And then how do you get the other rune chants in order to enable Runegate? And that seems to be kind of the puzzle with Vynsette. And this banish trigger is not a May. You have to banish every single turn if you have a card in hand. And you only get the rune chant if you banish. She's a pretty interesting hero. There's like a lot of moving parts. It feels like you need... This is a hero I have played with a little bit. It seems like you need a ton of blood debt in her because you really don't want to miss. I'm going to guess it's going to be kind of like Arrows and Lexi, where you want like 35 plus blood debt, I would assume. And then you're going to want ways to generate rune chants. And there are a few key ones in the set that help her do this. And then I think you can also look at some of the existing card pool, such as Runeblood Incantation seems like a really key card for her because that's going to make a rune chant at the start of your turn. And that's like kind of, if you banish a card, get a resource, and you have a Runeblood Incantation, then all of your 2 costs are already online, and you can kind of banish the card, come in with a 2 for 6 and 2 rune chants, and that's like a 1 card 8, which is really strong. So when she's doing her thing, I think she's really good. It's just a matter of like making sure that you don't get behind on your blood debt and start having to mandatory banish and you like can't keep your hand. So there's like she's interesting. I think she can be really good, and then I think there's some like awkwardness to her as well.
I don't know. I still can't see how you make a third rune chant with this deck like consistently for
Yeah.
the 3 cost rune gates. Do you have a solution to that, or have you thought of a solution to that?
Yeah, there's some stuff that you can do. I will say that the difference between 2 and 3 is really really big. Some of the things that I've been messing around with, like I don't have too much I don't have too much insight here, but some of the things I've been messing around with is Nebula Blade. I think is pretty real. Just the 2 for 4 that makes a rune chant on hit seems pretty solid because your opponents are often not going to want to break that stop that breakpoint, and then that is a way you can get to the third rune chant. If you have like Nebula Blade hit plus an incantation, you get to the third rune chant. Another way to do this, Envelop in Darkness at red. This is a 1 for 3 Shadow Runeblade action that blocks for 2. And it says create a rune chant. The next action card that you rune gate this turn gets +3, and it has go again. So this can be a way to kind of cheat 1 extra, and I think is a pretty key piece of the puzzle. And then she also has Funeral Moon, which is a 0 cost block 3 with Blood Debt as a Shadow Runeblade action. Pitches for red. It says you may play this from your banish zone. If a hero has lost life this turn, you can play it as though it were an instant, and it creates a single rune chant. I think Funeral Moon's like a really interesting card. It looks really bad, and the little bit that I've played the deck, I feel like it might be a key piece of the puzzle because the rune chants are so much in this deck. Like it's like a damage and a resource. It lets you do things like block with 3 cards for 9 and then banish this, get a rune chant, then you play it, you get a second rune chant, then you're already at 2 rune chants, and your next turn your 3 rune chants is online. And I think because when you do rune gate, it's so above rate, and like the difference of like 1 more rune chant is like you get your whole extra attack that comes in for 6 and all the rune chants, or you don't. So I don't know. I think that the card is like interesting and maybe part of how you get to that third rune chant, but I do think that the 2 costs are going to be kind of your bread and butter.
This deck is really good at closing out games too, right? Because of the Vynsette's ability to just pay a life and make
Yeah.
your rune chant be unpreventable. So like once you get to that like lower life threshold, you have to just like you just use Vynsette's ability and kill your opponent.
Yeah. And she's just pretty good at setting up big turns because she can bank cards and then play these big attacks for no resources. And it's not that hard to piece together like a 20 damage turn with her. I guess another key card that makes rune chants is Revel in Runeblood. You can creepers this in. So if you have a 2 cost and a 3 cost, you could, if you have 2 rune chants, play the 2 cost. You have to have another non-attack somewhere in here, but you start with a non-attack, you play the 2 cost, you creepers in Revel, and then you play the 3 cost, and you have like a pretty massive turn when you do that.
Wait, you can play the 4 cost?
You could play the 4 cost, yeah.
That's so cool.
Revel definitely feels like maybe the biggest enabler in this deck. Like it won't always line up, of course, just as Revel doesn't, but Revel in this deck might be like one of the best decks for Revel. Like maybe like it almost feels, I don't know. I don't want to say it's better than Viscera because Mordred Tide Revel is like insane, but it is perhaps comparable because you're getting the resources out of it too.
Yeah, Vynsette's one of my most anticipated hero where I'm just like, man, this hero has to be like broken because it's so efficient and like you just get to do so many things that are like above rate. And then there's a part of me that's just like, this deck can just like can go horribly wrong against like any kind of disruption. I think we were talking about this earlier. What happens when you get pummeled with this deck?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like Vynsette sometimes she can't use all of her cards, or she needs all of her cards to be able to pull off her turn. Like she seems very picky, and her hands seem a little bit finicky. And because of that, I think that disruption might hurt her a lot. And I don't know if that's just a matter of like the lists aren't refined and you'll find lists that are more resilient and more consistent, or if that's just going to be part of the hero baked in. Another kind of interesting question I have is there's like a rules question around RuneGate. RuneGate has this weird wording that is actually only on RuneGate, and it says if you control rune chants equal or greater than widespread runes cost, you may play it from your banished zone without paying its cost. So a lot of people are guessing that this works like an alternate cost, where if you have like a frostbite, you'll pay the one resource on top of the needing the rune chants, but it's not actually clear exactly how it interacts because it does say that you don't pay the resource cost and frostbite increases the resource cost. So I don't know if that means you like need another rune chant to rune gate. I don't know if that means you pay one resource. I don't know if it means you ignore the frostbite. We kind of need the rules for the set to really know how it works.
That is a good question. Actually, yeah, you are right. That would change if you don't have to pay at all, then this card's really good against ice heroes. And if you had to pay, then this card is considerably bad against frostbites.
Yeah, like if it makes you have to have one more frostbite, or sorry, one more rune chant to pay for the frostbite, that's really brutal. One resource is like also kind of rough. She's pretty tight on resources, but ignoring it would be pretty good. And I don't know. I don't know which one it is.
And I said this earlier, but one of the best things about this hero, you get to play with Carrion Husk. That card's broken.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, she like kind of has some disruption baked in, like widespread destructions, a 3 for 6 with RuneGate. And says when the combat chain closes, each hero who has lost life this turn banishes a card from their arsenal. This is just arsenal destruction. It doesn't take the whole arsenal and they get to choose, but this is arsenal destruction that is just you can make it actually uninteractable with Vynsette's ability if you make the rune chant unblockable, but also just if you're just playing this for 3 rune chants and 6, it's like I either get your arsenal or you're giving me 3 cards.
Yeah, a blue and two, a blue
Yeah,
and
specifically a
two.
blue and 2 cards. And that's assuming you don't have anything else on the combat chain. Like if you've pumped this or you have a follow-up Nebula Blade or like anything, it very quickly becomes you just cannot stop this effect. And I think that's pretty powerful. And the blue one is a 4-cost rune gate that makes them banish from hand. So it's kind of interesting to see a hero that can go so big and also have access to disruption that is, I think, pretty unique. I guess Lexi sort of has an element of that, but it feels a little bit different.
I kind of like the design. It's kind of interesting, and honestly, I'm excited about this deck. I want to see people break it. I don't think I'm gonna work on this deck. The deck I'm working on would probably be Levia. Yeah, I just want to see this deck. If it's broken, I'm definitely like prepared to play it.
It's probably the deck I'm starting with, and then Levia is the other one that I'm most interested in. I tested with a lot of people that really like Prism, and I'm sure they'll figure if there's something there, I'm confident that they will figure it out.
Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Maybe let's just highlight one more key card. We've talked about a lot of cards. I think there's a lot of stuff in this set. We have by no means covered everything. But one card that we saw really early on in spoiler season that still kind of stands out to me, especially with Oldhim LLing, is Starstruck. This is a Bravo specialization. It is a yellow pitch 7-cost attack that has 10 power and 3 defense. The crush effect reads, when this deals 4 or more damage to a hero, the only attacks they may play or activate during their next turn are attacks with power greater than the damage dealt this way. So if you crush and deal base power, thanks. So if you crush for 4, they have to pay at least base 5 power or higher. If you crush for 5, they would need to play an attack with base 6 power or higher. I think this is good both as like another disruptive tool just to help Bravo keep consistency. I think it being a yellow is kind of relevant. It helps pay for some of your cards. And I think that the unity effect on it, so the unity, when this defends together with another card from hand, you make a seismic surge and under any number of heroes control. So I think this is for PvE, but you can just make it under your own control. This is just super good. Getting to cheat on a resource is really good. You can do something like block with 2 cards, keep 2 blues and play a Crippling Crush from Arsenal. You could also, if you've already made a Seismic Surge with Tectonic Plating, which Bravo is often doing, and you could do something like block with 2 cards, pitch a blue, Spinal Crush, because you'd have the Seismic from your Tech Plating and your Seismic from Starstruck. I think this card's just going to be really, really good. Like both as a defensive card to enable your other attacks, as well as just a threat on its own. And I think that Bravo looks to be potentially pretty interesting to me. Again, especially with Oldham being gone. Because I feel like Bravo's biggest problem before was it just like, well, you could just play the same deck but play Oldham and like, yeah, you lose Crippling Crash, but like you get Crown of Seeds and Stalagmite and all the ice cards and the earth cards.
Yeah, you just got like 2 extra legendaries that were like above rate.
Yeah, that were like pretty
It was in contention to get banned, but didn't get banned because of the rarity.
yeah. I think a lot of people would put Crown of Seas as like one of the most powerful cards in the game.
Yes, yes, definitely, by far. That card is broken.
All right. Anything you want to touch on before we wrap up here?
Oh yes, last thing. I'm actually really glad that they did this. Looks like Crown of Providence is a reprint in this set as the last L being spoiled. And all I have to say is I sold mine recently and I need a new one. So it's great that I got reprinted so I can try and get one for slightly cheaper than what I sold it for.
Yeah, and I almost feel like, I mean, we talked a little bit about the price of owls being too high, and I think a lot of people have expressed this. And I almost feel like I'd like to see like a Tunic or a Crown of Providence or like Command and Conquer at legendary rarity, or just like print these like really expensive cards in small quantities and sets just consistently, and just make it so that at the like in the best case it will bring the price down a little bit, and in the maybe not so, like in the other case, the more conservative case, like as the game grows and more people come into the game, at least there will still be a supply of these so that they don't just keep going up, because there's only so many Crown of Providence right now. They're not being open that much, and unless you put them in new sets as the player base grows, there's just going to be more demand and like maybe some more supply, but not that much, right? Like people really aren't opening the old sets that much these days.
Yeah, well, I think the best part of that would be like now there's a hit in a set, like that
Mhm.
now there's a guaranteed card that people wanna hit. So like it keeps the prices of like it keeps the EV of the actual set higher, which is a good thing too. Like look at Everfest. Like that set just doesn't have any L's that anybody wants. So then it's so hard to get the M's from the set, which drives the M prices up a little too high. And I'd rather just have like imagine if there was a Command and Conquer at Legendary in that set, then it'll be great. Like, there'll be a card that people are
Well,
chasing for.
well, to be fair, Everfest does have Skullcap in it, which was cool at the time. It just kind of had the problem of not that long after Crown of Providence came out, and now Skullcap doesn't see a lot of play. So I think they had the right idea with Everfest, but like it has kind of evolved in a weird way.
I see. You know what? You're right. I paid like infinite dollars for my skull cap, and then it got reprinted in Everfest. You know what? You're right. You're right. You're right. That makes sense. Everfest tried, and then they just power crept that card, so that card's no longer being played.
I think it's still a good like way for them to do things, and I hope that they continue to do it. Maybe even in like regular sets, honestly.
It's so funny that skull cap's a budget option now.
Yeah. Well, budget.
It's fifty
It's still like
dollars.
50 US,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean,
it's a significant upgrade from like an Iron Rot helm.
yes, yeah, it definitely is. It's a very good card, and
It's
I
not
think we
two
even
hundred.
saw I think we even saw, was it Mara Ferris on Dromai in PT Baltimore finals playing Skullcap into certain matchups, because it does technically have the potential for one more armor block. So it's not even like completely unplayable. It's just,
It's different.
yeah, it just has different strengths than Crown of Providence. It's not strictly worse Crown of Providence, although Crown of Providence has largely overshadowed it.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with how good Oldham was, because you just
Yeah.
never played Skullcap against Oldham because Oldham had Pummel, and against any format with Pummel in it, Crown of Providence is just superior.
Yeah. Like what we were talking about with Levia, maybe still playing Crown of Providence if CNC Pummel's a big part of the format. All right. I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. As always, thanks for listening. We really appreciate all of you listeners. Please let us know down in the comments what you're most excited from in Dusk Till Dawn. Is there something that we missed that we didn't touch on that you've been really excited about? It wouldn't surprise me, honestly. There's a lot of cool cards in this set, and we just, only had so much time today to talk about them. But yeah, we'd love to hear about whatever you're excited about, whether it's a deck, a hero, a new card, a new interaction, down in the comments below. If you want to get in touch with us or find us online, you can find us on Twitter. Jay is at UedaJ and I'm at Yukili Bender, or you can email us directly at onthebauble@gmail.com and send us any of your questions, feedback, comments, etc. Next week, I think we'll be jumping back towards Monarch Draft and picking up one of the remaining heroes, so either Levia or Boltyn, and going from there. Until next time, hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Oh yes, Shiana. Thank you. Yes, Shiana. So with this new set, Shiana gets a new random specialization. Card is actually quite interesting, at least to me. It's called Alluring Inducement, and it says when this attacks, the defending hero reveals their hand. You may choose an attack action card revealed this way, and if you do, this becomes the chosen card. So this is a way where you can play this 2 cost, and it randomly turns into something like a Spinal Crush or a Crippling Crush sometimes. How good
It's
is that?
true.
That
I don't
has to be
know.
insane.
I think it's like easy to think about the ceiling on this card. I don't know how good it's gonna be.
Like, the floor on this card is after you play it attacks for 2.
Yeah,
That's
that's
not
bad.
that's not bad. It's fine. Depends on who. It really
I
depends
think
on which
you've been
hero you
I
are.
think you've been playing too much Force Prism in Monarch Draft, and you're being tainted by this. A 0 for 3 without Go Again is not playable and constructed, and a 0 for 2 is definitely not playable. Now,
Well,
this
it's
is
not
probably
0. It's a
better
2
than a
for
0
it's
for
a 2
2.
for 2. It's a 2 for
Okay,
2.
2 for 2, so even worse. I don't know. I think even just like Shiana being a blitz hero, so this is always in your deck because you don't have a sideboard, and then it's not even a 3 block is kind of rough.
But it's
I
a
don't
yellow
know.
pitch. It's a yellow pitch. You can always pitch it. Look,
It's a cool
you can,
card. I
it has
don't
a
think Shiana's
unity.
a real deck.
Like, it has unity. Like, we can play every unity card. Like, we can play the Dorenthia specialization for the unity to get the courage token. You can play Starstruck for the unity to get a seismic surge token. It doesn't do anything unless you're playing against Bravo, exactly, but like,
No, that's not true. You could get a Seismic Surge token for your Crippling Crush.
oh, but it only works with exactly Crippling Crush.
Yes.
But if you're playing against Guardian, then all of your
Oh,
cards turn into Guardian cards, so every card can get reduced by 1.
that is true. I don't know. Shiana looks like a cool hero. I hope that she gets. I would like to see like a full shapeshifter hero be a thing. I think that would be really cool. But
Look, there is Battleheart in Portland coming up, and I am strongly thinking about looking into try and find a team that is willing to let me play Shiana, and go from there. Basically, there has to be something good, right? Like, there has to be. There's so many sets now. Like, this card came out like 3 years ago, and there was like no specialization. Now there's so many specializations. It has to be okay.
I agree
Herald
that
of
she's gotten a lot better. I don't know if it's a coherent deck. We'll have to see. I'm
Herald
skeptical.
Herald
I don't think I want to be teaming with Jay for Battleheart in Portland.
it has to be something good. Like Herald of Erudition is such a strong card. Oakenold is such a good card. Oh, we don't have Earth cards. Wait. That card is not an Oldham specialization. It can't play Pulse of Eisenlaw. Why is the card a specialization?
Oh, but you can play Northern Winds and Anthem of Spring, and then you can fuse Oakenold.
Oh my god.
Seems really bad.
Yeah, that does sound kind of bad.
They both block too.
Whoa, Anthem of Springs is a 3-block.
Oh yeah, essentially because of Unity. Yeah.
Yeah,
The Unity effect on Anthem of Spring is pretty good.
It's kind of funny that you can actually play Oakenold and fuse it in Shiana.
Wait. Oakenold's not a specialization.
Oakenold's not a specialization!
Because Starvo was able to play it. I remember everybody complaining because it has Oldham on it.
Oh, yeah. It's Endless Winter.
Yeah, you can play Endless Winter fused.
That card's pretty good.
It is pretty good. Oh, you have another card for your Seismic Surge.
Oh. Wait.
I still don't think this deck is good, but it's
No.
interesting.
Oh, in addition. Never mind. Yes, it's in addition. Sorry, I was reading Shiana. I thought it switched. It replaced the typing on all the cards, but it's actually in addition. It's interesting. It's really funny. We can play Bequest of Vastvion, which is a new card from this set. It's a Viscerai specialization. It says that next Runebleed attack action card you play this turn costs resource less to play for each rune chant you control.
You should just play Titanium Bauble in your deck.
Honestly, it might make the cut because I need some good cards in my deck, and Titanium Bauble is that good card. You think I'm joking? Like the people listening to this think I'm joking, but I'm not joking. Titanium Bubble's fine.
This deck is so bad.
Look, all I want to do now is bring this deck to the Battlehorn in Portland, play against Yuki's team, and crush them with one of the wins from our team being myself with Shiana. That is what I have to do now.
You'll get your time in the sun on the podcast if you do that. But good luck.
Like I said this when Shiana first came out. This card has to become broken at some point in the game. I don't know when that is. I don't think it's this year. It might not be next year, but like 4 years from now, there's going to be so many more specializations.
Yeah, that's fair. At some point, this card will be good. It's just...
Like, Erudition is so good. You draw 2 cards on hit with Dominate. You just need some other way to do something with it.
Yeah, maybe one of your specializations will help you.
Okay, I think that's good enough.
Okay.
All right, good night, guys.
Good night.